I'm Tracy Sabol. Tonight on EWTN News Nightly, visit to Washington. Ukraine's leader is in the nation's capital for high-level talks and asking for more funding for the ongoing war. Military appointments. New developments in Senator Tommy Tuberville's push regarding the Pentagon's abortion policy. We're on Capitol Hill. Stronger together. Bishops in Haiti are asking for help amid more bloodshed in the Caribbean nation. And the friend of sinners. Learn more about today's saint and his impact on the Catholic Church. These stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you for being with us on the Feast of St. Matthew the Apostle. Our top story tonight, President Joe Biden welcomes Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to the White House today. This marks his second trip to Washington since Russia's invasion. It comes as President Biden asks lawmakers to sign off on another $24 billion worth of aid to Ukraine. White House correspondent Owen Judson reports.
Tracy, President Biden has repeatedly said the U.S. will help Ukraine battle Russia for as long as it takes. But tonight, it's not known how long that will be. And he's calling on world leaders to stand strong with Ukraine. On the south portico of the White House, President Joe Biden meets again with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. The two then headed to the Oval Office, where they sat down to talk. Before stopping at the White House, Zelensky arrived on Capitol Hill, meeting with lawmakers who are deciding whether to sign off on more aid. Since the start of the war, U.S. lawmakers have approved 4 rounds of aid to Ukraine, totaling about $113 billion.
And I'm totally committed to support Ukraine until we win this war and help them win that war.
Oh, I'm not in favor of additional Ukraine funding, particularly not without any real oversight.
Some lawmakers now questioning the flow of American dollars to Ukraine. The war there dragging on for some 19 months. And the killing continues unabated. Today, Russian missiles and artillery pounding cities across Ukraine, sparking fires, killing at least 3 people and trapping others under the rubble of destroyed buildings. The early morning wave of missile strikes, Russia's largest in over a month. Video shows rescue workers helping the injured. And back at the White House in the press briefing room today, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan.
War is inherently unpredictable, of course. So I can't look you in the eye, and I certainly can't look them in the eye and predict exactly what's going to happen on exactly what timetable. And therefore, we need to have a degree of flexibility and adaptability in our approach.
Now tonight, the president is scheduled to speak at the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute. And then tomorrow, President Biden will deliver remarks on preventing gun violence. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
A major victory for pro-life Republican Senator Tommy Tuberville. Over the past several months, the lawmaker has been holding up more than 300 Defense Department nominations, protesting the Pentagon's taxpayer-funded abortion travel policy. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales joins us now with the latest developments. Eric.
Well, good evening, Tracy. Senator Tommy Tuberville has now forced Democratic leadership to act on DOD nominations one by one. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer caved into the holdout and decided to hold votes, starting with the chairman of the new Joint Chiefs of Staff. The Democratic leadership blamed Senator Tuberville for the impasse, calling the move, quote, extraordinary circumstances.
It seems that Senator Tuberville is becoming more and more desperate to get out of the box he has put himself in. He's desperate to shift the responsibility on to others.
But Senator Tuberville and other Republicans say that's nonsense.
Chuck Schumer allowing the backlog to build up over 6 months is his fault. We could have been confirming 1 or 2 a week for the last 200 days. It would have taken us just 4 hours of voting each week. But we didn't do it.
Senator Schumer has had this opportunity for months now. He is the one that has been holding hostage the military men and women that serve this country. So why the heck didn't he do it sooner?
Republicans have long argued that the Defense Department went around Congress to change their abortion policy after the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe.
Let this be a message to Secretary Austin. If you want to make the laws, run for Congress, but you can't legislate from the E-ring at the Pentagon.
As for hurting readiness, former Principal Deputy Undersecretary of Defense and retired Air Force pilot Dave Patterson tells me not a chance.
How is the operational tempo and frequency of joint and combined exercises, for example? And as far as I know, no exercises have been canceled, or reduced in size for lack of senior Senate confirmed leadership.
In fact, in the most contentious Indo-Pacific region right now, exercises have increased. Senator Tuberville says he's standing strong.
The hold will remain in place as long as the Pentagon's illegal abortion policy remains in place. If the Pentagon lifts the policy, then I will lift my hold. It's easy as that.
Hundreds of other promotions remain in limbo, but Senator Tuberville tells me he's not going to budge because the Defense Department is the one breaking the law. Meanwhile, we have some other big news coming from the other side of the chambers, the U.S. House. Republicans again failed to advance a spending bill. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy has sent members home for at least today, leaving in limbo a planned Saturday vote on a continuing resolution. Again, the government does plan to shut down on October 1st. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
And joining us now is John Elliott, managing partner at Brighton Strategy Group and the chief spokesman for the National Security Council under former President Donald Trump. John, great to have you back on. All right, let's talk more about the standoff between Senate Democrats, including Chuck Schumer, and Republican Tommy Tuberville. Your thoughts on this, and do you think that this is hurting military readiness?
No, not at all, Tracy. First of all, it's great to join you here once again, but off the top, what you could say is that, look, this is something that the Democrats actually did when I was on the Senate Armed Services Committee for a long time under Republican Chairman John Warner. The ranking member of that committee actually held up the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and actually had him retire earlier for a social issue that he disagreed with at that time, and it was really protecting Hillary Clinton then. So this is a tool that both parties use, particularly when it comes to when somebody, and in that case, that was just a social view that the Democrats had. In this case, you actually have a Secretary of Defense unilaterally changing a policy on abortion when that needs to come through Congress, that needs to come through the Senate. And so Tommy Tuberville has only a few tools at his disposal, and one of them is to say, look, that is not right, and if you gave him more tools, great, he would use another tool. But right now, that is one of the most powerful things, is to put a hold on. And look, it got resolved. You got the Commandant of the Marine Corps, you got the Chairman of Joint Chiefs, ultimately confirmed. And so that's something that, but he's still going to have his hold, Tommy is, before they actually change the policy. So good on him for releasing the holds on the top guys. But to your point, there was no national security put at risk. It's obviously good to have the permanent people in place, and that's going to happen now while he still keeps the pressure on the administration.
Yeah, now I'm going to turn to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. He was in Washington today, in part seeking more money for the war in Ukraine. However, as we heard, not everyone is on board. A number of lawmakers, well, they want accountability. They want to see where the money is going. And then there are some who feel, we should fund Ukraine for as long as it takes. That said, how long will this take? Bloomberg is reporting that a senior official from one of the G7 countries is saying this conflict could last 6 or 7 more years. John, that's a long time. Is this sustainable?
No, it's absolutely not sustainable. By some counts, I know your tee-up had it at about 117, 120 billion. In some, if you look at all the humanitarian aid put in there as well, it's close to 200 billion at this point. And look, to just close the border altogether would take about $20 billion. So this is 10 times what it would take to close our border. Meantime, we're concerned about putting more money. There's now 24 billion proposed. More money to secure Ukraine's borders. If you take a step back, Tracy, we would never be in this issue if Trump had been president or if he remained president, because Putin never invaded Ukraine, never invaded any country, any neighboring country on his watch when President Trump was in there, because President Trump was somebody who was respected. When you look at the way that Biden handled the disastrous pullout from Afghanistan, still held nobody from the military or his chain of command responsible for that or accountable for that. That is something that telegraphs weakness. That's why we have an issue with now a 19-month war in Ukraine, and the taxpayers are fed up with paying this to that. And just let me add one more thing there. If you look at Zelensky came to the UN last night or yesterday and was actually speaking to the UN in this commando outfit. He looked like somebody from the John Fetterman changing the rules in the Senate. Put on a tie if you're going to come begging for money from the UN and the international community, because people are tired about spending this and not paying attention to our own priorities here in the U.S.
John, something else on top of mind. I want to talk about that Marine Corps F-35 fighter jet crash. What more can you tell us about this? I mean, it seems there's like a lot more questions than answers here, leaving maybe some to wonder, should we be concerned about our military aircrafts and their capabilities?
Well, certainly, Tracy, I know we have just got a small amount of time here. What I would say is that here with the F-35 fighter that crashed there, that is a very sophisticated aircraft. It costs close to 3 times as much as the F-16 fighters that are really kind of like the workhorses up to now for the last 20 years. So these are huge jets, probably cost about $150 billion, between $117 and $170 million per aircraft. These are very expensive jets. To have 2 of them go down in recent couple of years now is something that's very concerning. The Commandant of the Marine Corps ordered a stand down or a safety stand down of the entire fleet right now, not only F-35s, but across the board to make sure that we're following safety standards. And that's the right thing. Meantime, we just need to get to the bottom of why these really, really expensive aircraft are not performing up to what the taxpayers expect.
John, real quick, we have probably maybe 30 seconds left or so. Something else in the news that I found pretty interesting. The Wall Street Journal is reporting China's fighter jets aren't just flying around Taiwan. They're actually practicing amid a surge of activity there from Beijing. This is aimed in part on trying to stop the U.S. from intervening should China try to invade Taiwan. Your thoughts on that, John, and how concerned are you about this?
Well, this is very concerning, Tracy. Once again, this comes back to the weakness that Biden is telegraphing on the world stage. Never under Trump's presidency were the Chinese poking at Taiwan, flying into their space, actually having training exercises, to your point here. And what they do is they sense weakness, and so they're looking and taking action the way they never were before. President Trump, once again, he was driving them to the biggest, the toughest trade deals ever. He put sanctions, the toughest ones, on Xi, and so Xi respected President Trump. And here, this is something where they're really poking at the bear. If we're the bear here, they're poking at the U.S. to just try to see how much they can get away with, and it's just a sign of our own weakness at the top.
Well, John, thanks so much for your insights. Always appreciate having you on.
Thank you, Tracy.
And we have a lot more still to come here on EWTN News Nightly, including seeking peace. The Prime Minister of Armenia responds to the apparent ceasefire with Azerbaijan, and new developments in the upcoming Synod on Synodality starting next month at the Vatican. Armenia's prime minister says peace should not be confused with a truce or ceasefire.
Թե տարածաշրջանային այս լարված միջավայրում ժամանակ առ ժամանակ բռնկվող ռազմական բախումների պայմաններում
The government leader made his remarks one day after reports said a truce had been reached between Armenia and Azerbaijan, ending several days of fighting. Meantime, talks have begun between regional leaders to focus on what to do in the contested Nagorno-Karabakh region. Azerbaijan is claiming full control of the area and has said it will provide humanitarian aid to Armenian Christians stuck there. The ceasefire was negotiated with help from Russia. Catholic bishops in Haiti are asking for help from the faithful amid rapid violence from street gangs. In a statement, the church leaders said in part, quote, "We echo the cry of an entire people faced with abandonment." They also call into question, quote, "the cynicism and the indifference of political leaders and the hesitation of the international community." And the bishops asked the faithful to pray a novena to St. Michael the Archangel to bring peace to Haiti. In Germany, a group of Catholic priests held a ceremonial blessing of same-sex couples. The ceremony outside of Cologne Cathedral was seen as an act of defiance toward Cardinal Rainier Woelke. Specifically, church leaders in the Archdiocese of Cologne, which is led by Cardinal Woelke, spoke out after a German priest held a blessing in March for couples, a group that included same-sex couples. More than 400 participants from all over the world will gather in Rome next month for the Synod on Synodality. It is the first of 2 meetings at the Vatican, with the second one set for October 2024. And with the first meetings just a couple of weeks away, today organizers held a news conference in Rome with a few important updates. Joining us now is Rudolf Gehrig, EWTN Vatican Bureau journalist, to tell us more about this. Rudolf, thanks for being with us. What is new for the Synod in October?
Good evening, Tracy. Yeah, in today's press conference, the Vatican presented the Synod schedule for October. We now know the daily schedule for the participants who will gather here in Rome for the Synod from October 4 to 29th. The Vatican has also updated its list of participants today. For example, Cardinal Luis Ladaria, former head of the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith, is no longer part of the Synod at his own request.
Rudolph, can you also tell us about the new participants?
Yes, new on the list for the Synod is, for example, Sister Mary Teresa Barron, the new president of the International Union of Superiors General, and Sister Nirmala Alex Maria Nathares, the Superior General of the Sisters of the Apostolic Carmel. But interesting are two new participants that Pope Francis has picked. For example, Bishop Antonio Yao Xun. He is the first Chinese bishop appointed by Pope Francis since the provisional agreement by the Holy See and China. Bishop Yao Xun is considered an expert on liturgy, but China experts say that Yao is not one to speak out critically about the Chinese government. But he's not the only new participant from China. Also joining the Synod is Bishop Joseph Yangyong Chang. He's considered loyal to the Chinese regime and was elected vice president of the Catholic Patriotic Association in 2016 before the Vatican's China deal.
Rudolph, what will the daily schedule of the Synod participants be like during these 4 weeks in Rome?
On October the 1st, the Synod members first attend a brief retreat at a house near Rome for 3 days of reflection. On October 4th, the Synod starts with an Holy Mass in St. Peter's Square, and then for the next 4 weeks, the participants begin almost every day at 8:45 a.m. with prayer before gathering for the General Assembly. In addition, there are other gatherings in small circles where the participants are to engage in conversation in small groups organized by languages. Most of the time, the gatherings end in the evening at 7:30. In between, there's time for prayer and rest, and on one day, there's even a small pilgrimage planned with the participants of the Synod. This Synodal Assembly then ends on Sunday, October 29, with a Holy Mass with Pope Francis in St. Peter's Square.
Rudolph, before I let you go, there are groups and initiatives that, as you know, hope that the Synod will bring about changes in the Church's doctrine. How does the Vatican intend to deal with these possible sources of conflict?
Yeah, Pope Francis has tried to integrate representatives of the various wings and inner church parties into the Synod. For example, he has chosen both the LGBT activist Father James Martin and Cardinal Gerhard Ludwig Müller, the former prefect of the Office for the Doctrine of the Faith, who is said to be rather conservative. At the same time, those responsible have repeatedly emphasized that this Synod, by its very nature, is intended to be something different from, for example, the controversial synodal way in Germany, which has led to a major division within the Church in Germany. So it's very interesting to know that on July 26th, 5 German bishops met for 3 hours behind closed doors with 5 senior members of the Curia at the Vatican to discuss theological issues. People at the Vatican called this meeting Operation Bomb Diffusal. All this shows the Pope wants a discussion at the Synod, yes, but he also wants to avoid that the Synod is hijacked by political activists within the Church.
Rudolph, thank you so much for that report. We appreciate it. Up next on EWTN News Nightly, a new form of slavery, what Italy's Prime Minister is saying about human trafficking. Plus, learn more as we celebrate the feast day of St. Matthew the Apostle. The Prime Minister of Italy is calling on the United Nations to stop human trafficking.
Che le espone ancora di più alla instabilità, le rende facili prede del terrorismo e del fondamentalismo.
Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni says that human trafficking, especially of migrants, is worth billions of dollars. She also says trafficking is a new form of slavery and says fighting to stop it is an objective that should unite everyone. Well, as we reported earlier this week, a Catholic hospital in Canada is under fire for giving a prominent role to an assisted suicide provider. Providence Hospital in Ontario named the euthanasia supporter and practitioner as interim director of palliative care. A variety of professional associations associations, including the Canadian Federation of Catholic Physicians, asked hospital and church officials to intervene. The Catholic Church strongly opposes assisted suicide. We go now to Alex Schadenberg, Executive Director of the Euthanasia Prevention Coalition. He is based in Canada. Alex, great to be with you again. First off, what more do we know about Dr. Danielle Kane? And we know her appointment is really causing a lot of concern over there, especially among the Canadian Federation of Catholic Physicians.
Yeah. Well, she's not only a euthanasia provider, so she's not only been involved with killing her patients, she's also been published on several occasions, and she's been pretty committed to this. So this is why it's such a great concern. But also the fact that the euthanasia lobby has been pushing so hard to try and force Catholic healthcare to be involved with euthanasia, participate in euthanasia. And now to do this really undermines the fact that the Catholic Church has been holding the line on this.
Yeah, and her title is the Interim Director of Palliative Care.
That's right.
Talk to us more about that job. And also, you know, why having an assisted suicide supporter and practitioner? I mean, we know that goes against church teaching, so why would they do it?
I think that you have people who are in charge of hospitals that are not necessarily thinking of the Catholic faith per se. They're bureaucrats, etc. It puts the church in a very bad position because the Archdiocese of Kingston, this is Kingston where this is happening, is not exactly like the Archbishop is actually a pretty good guy, actually. So this is not something you would have expected to have happen, but he's certainly being put in a bad place, and hopefully he does the right thing. And there's nothing easy about this situation. But you have to understand the real problem with this is that recently Quebec passed a bill which is going to force all palliative care institutions in the province of Quebec to provide euthanasia. And I was recently speaking to a doctor in Quebec, and they're working on a court case because there's a couple of, faith-based Catholic palliative care institutions in Quebec who are really upset that this is taking away their rights because they're being forced to participate in killing. Recently in Vancouver, the St. Paul's Hospital has had a big situation because the euthanasia lobby is pushing St. Paul's to be directly involved with euthanasia. And of course, they're refusing. So what happened is a few months ago, one of their patients who was in palliative care had asked for euthanasia, and of course they refused, but then they transferred that patient out of the Catholic hospital, and now that family is making a big deal of it, and the euthanasia lobby is pressuring the British Columbia government to force St. Paul's to be part of euthanasia. And at the moment they haven't been forced, but you see this pressure, and then Kingston now hires a euthanasia doctor to be head of palliative care. You realize right off the bat that this is not a good thing. First of all, it's not a good thing anyway, but on top of it, you can see how all this political pressure could lead to something in a very bad way.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. I mean, where does this all go?
Yeah, that's exactly it. I would hope that Dr. Danielle Kane doesn't do something that undermines the hospital's position. But, the problem is a lot of these decisions are made behind closed doors. You can't have a killer involved with palliative care in a Catholic hospital. You just can't. What they do outside of the hospital, I guess you can't control in any way. But within the hospital, you can't have them have positions like that, because how can you trust someone who's willing to kill their patient?
Yeah, it really kind of boggles the mind there, Alex. Curious, what else you're following? Anything else going on in Canada or overseas?
Well, right now there's a lot of issues in Canada related to euthanasia for poverty, euthanasia for people who are homeless. But the whole issue of euthanasia for mental illness is really big right now because of the fact that Bill C-314 will have its second hour debate on October 3rd. That's the bill to prevent euthanasia for mental illness. And it's a private member's bill. So if that were to pass, that would obviously give us great hope. But on top of it, right now, the government has scheduled March 17th of 2024 to allow euthanasia for mental illness alone, meaning you wouldn't have to not have a terminal condition, you could have a chronic mental health condition, and you would be able to be killed by euthanasia. Now, I know they do that in the Netherlands and Belgium already, but our rules will be far wider. And this is very scary considering the number of people going through mental health issues that, sometimes you feel like your life lacks meaning, purpose, or value, and you might ask to have your life ended. You can't allow this in any way, shape, or form for people, especially in these very vulnerable situations.
Absolutely. We've got to pray about it. Alex, thank you so much for being with us. Always appreciate it. Finally tonight, today is the feast day of St. Matthew the Evangelist, a man who was ridiculed as a tax collector, then turned into an apostle of Jesus. Pope Benedict XVI said, when we look at St. Matthew, we see that those who seem to be farthest from holiness can become a model of the reach of God's mercy. While St. Matthew's tomb can be found in Salerno, Italy, a bronze statue crafted by Michelangelo sits above the altar. Beautiful. And we thank you for watching tonight. Remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, X, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Tracy Sabol. Good night and God bless.